Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take your sources, articles, notes, whatever you send us, and really get into them.
Yeah, we pull out the most important bits of knowledge, the key insights, just for you.
Think of it as a shortcut to getting up to speed, packed with maybe some surprising facts, things you might not hear elsewhere.
And today, we're diving into your sources on women's health, healing, and wisdom. We're going to lean pretty heavily on the insights from Christiane Northrup's book, Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom.
Right. Our mission is basically to extract those core ideas that really make a difference, help you connect the dots, give you a perspective that goes beyond the usual chat.
Okay, so let's kick off with maybe the most foundational idea from your material, this deep, deep unity between the mind and the body.
Yeah, and this isn't just like philosophical talk. The source makes it clear your mind and body are totally intertwined. They're constantly talking through the immune system, endocrine, nervous system.
Even connective tissue, apparently. It's this intricate communication network. Modern science is catching up, but, ancient healing ways, they always knew this. Body and mind are one thing.
And here's a really radical idea from the source. No illness is just physical, ever.
Right. It always has emotional and mental sides, too. I mean, just thinking about that, it completely shifts how you look at being sick or getting well.
It really does. And the source goes even further, suggesting we're not just, static lumps of flesh. We're more like dynamic fields of energy vibration.
It brings in Bruce Lipton's ideas, arguing that our conscious mind, it can actually be more powerful than our genes or our upbringing when you look at how thoughts, emotions, energy affect us.
And the way the source shows this power, that Ellen Langer study, is fascinating.
Oh, yeah, the one with the men over 70 living for 5 days like it was 1959.
Exactly. And they weren't just reminiscing. They were told to be their 1959 selves. Everything around them, the music, the talk, was from that time.
And the results were, well, pretty stunning. Things we normally think decline with age, strength, perception, thinking skills, taste, hearing, they actually got better.
Yeah, the source even mentions photos showed they looked younger afterwards.
Younger. It just drives home that your mindset isn't just about feelings. It can physically, measurably change things.
So, thinking about this fundamental unity, what does that mean for your approach to your own health? How do you start thinking about that?
Well, building right on that, the source gets into something it calls feminine intelligence.
Okay, what's that exactly?
It's described as like a woman's natural ability to know things, not just logically with the brain, but also feeling it, knowing it in her body at the same time.
That makes a lot of sense. The source kind of suggests that our usual education, it doesn't really value that. It's all about finding the one right answer.
Right, not embracing that maybe messier, intuitive knowledge that comes from listening to your body and your thoughts together.
And the source says because of that, some really smart women actually end up feeling like they're stupid because that kind of intelligence wasn't recognized.
So reclaiming that full intelligence means really valuing that link, thoughts, feelings, body sensations. And the source stresses, no matter what you've been through, you have the power right now to change what it means to you.
And changing the meaning changes your emotional state, your physical state. That's where the healing happens.
Exactly. Which leads to this really key idea.
Yeah.
Your body's symptoms. They're not just annoyances to get rid of.
They're messages, like your body's trying to talk to you.
Precisely. The source gives examples, maybe chronic vaginitis is your body saying, leave this relationship, or premenstrual headaches mean cut the caffeine.
Yeah.
And this is crucial. Only you can truly know what your symptom is trying to tell you.
So the advice isn't just take a pill. It's more like sit with it, be curious, listen without judging.
Yeah, try to appreciate your body's own unique language. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How might your body be trying to communicate with you right now? Are you actually listening?
Okay, let's shift a bit. Your source material also takes a critical look at some conventional practices in women's healthcare.
Right. It argues that certain routine procedures, they weren't always based on the best science. Sometimes they came from, prejudice or just old ideas passed down, often ignoring the body's own wisdom.
The example given is the routine episiotomy during childbirth, that cut.
Midwives were apparently saying for years it wasn't always needed. And studies piled up for like a decade showing it often increased damage, more blood loss, more pain, pelvic floor problem.
But it was still super common.
Yeah, until that big JAMA study in 2005 really hammered the point home and more people started questioning it. The source uses it to show how practices can stick around even when the evidence says maybe they're not the best thing.
The source also talks about the doctor-patient dynamic, like how easy it is to mix up taking responsibility for your health with feeling blamed for being sick.
And it suggests something really interesting. A doctor's belief about your potential to heal, conscious or not, can actually affect whether you do get well.
Wow, so finding a practitioner whose beliefs actually support your healing journey is really important then.
Absolutely. The source quotes Phil McGraw, Dr. Phil, "We teach people how to treat us."
Meaning, if you're empowered, if you ask for what you need, you can kind of bring out the healer in most doctors and get better care. Makes sense.
And this critique carries over into childbirth, too, the over-medicalization of it. The source points to the C-section rates in the U.S. like 33% now.
Which is way higher than what the WHO recommends as optimal, right? Like 5–10%. They say over 15% can actually be harmful.
Exactly. And the source wonders why. Is it fear of lawsuits? Or maybe how older moms or those who had fertility issues get lumped into high-risk categories automatically, sort of hexed by statistics that might not even apply to them individually, leading to interventions maybe they didn't need.
It contrasts different ways of managing labor, too. Like that San Francisco study, it showed when midwife use went up and episiotomy rates dropped, severe tearing actually went down.
Yeah, challenges that idea that cutting is always the safer option.
And there's that story about the woman who just wanted to be knocked out for labor. Knock me out. I'm not an Indian.
Oof. Yeah, the source uses that to show an attitude that kind of disconnects from the body's own power in birth, seeing technology as just better.
But then Northrup shares her own second birth story, which sounds completely different.
Totally. She talks about going really deep into the pain, feeling it was this sacred thing between her and her baby, trusting her body, trusting nature, letting go of that intellectual control, that death grip, as she calls it.
And that experience made her realize something huge. She felt she'd actually been part of physical abuse before by coaching women to push, push, push instead of trusting the body's own timing.
It's a powerful shift in perspective. So let's go deeper into that energy side of things, specifically around the pelvis and reproductive health. This is a big focus in your sources.
Okay, so the source connects the pelvic organs, ovaries, tubes, uterus with what it calls the second chakra.
Right, the energy center down in the pelvis area. It's linked to our feelings about power, creativity, money, sex, relationships, our agency in the world.
And the idea is the health of those organs. It's tied to how competent and powerful you feel in those life areas, how good you feel about yourself, your relationships.
So conversely, if you're in stressful relationships or a job where you feel totally stuck, maybe financially or emotionally dependent, that can negatively impact those organs, potentially raising the risk for problems.
So things like fibroids, endometriosis, ovarian issues, the source sees them not just as physical problems, but maybe as signs of blocked energy in the pelvis.
Exactly. Linked to maybe chronic stress, unresolved emotions, or pouring all your creative juice into things that feel like dead ends.
It also mentions studies linking childhood sexual abuse to a higher risk for chronic pelvic pain, eating disorders, addiction, a whole range of things.
And there's that interesting observation about how emotions might manifest physically, like raging emotions hitting below the belt, while unexpressed sadness shows up more above the belt. It's a pattern, the source notes.
And crucially, the source says those lower chakra wounds, especially from trauma, they don't really heal until they're witnessed.
Meaning acknowledged. By someone else, maybe, but most importantly, by you. You have to acknowledge the hurt and the need for healing. Denial just keeps it locked inside, literally in your cells, according to the source.
There are some specific stories in the source that really illustrate this, aren't there?
Yeah, like the friend who got an ovarian cyst right when she was realizing her job and marriage were just wrong for her. Her body kind of made her emotional state solid,
Or Beverly, with endometriosis and a cyst. Her body and a medical intuitive apparently revealed this pattern of always squashing her own creative needs for her family and job.
And Doris, who healed fibroids and endometriosis by writing letters. Letters to unborn potential beings. That led to this dream of doves flying from her uterus. A feeling of lightness and physical healing followed. It's quite something.
Even Northrup herself connects removing a large fibroid to needing to learn those second chakra lessons about money, sex, power. Realizing her relationship with her work, feeling undervalued, was part of that block.
Yeah, it's all interconnected. The source also briefly touches on polycystic ovaries maybe being linked to high insulin-refined foods, and ovarian cancer possibly linked to diet-saturated fat dairy. But it also notes spontaneous remission happens, which is hopeful.
Okay, let's move on to the wisdom in women's cycles and the menstrual cycle especially, and how that connects to sexuality.
Right, the source presents the menstrual cycle as this amazing inner guidance system. It's naturally linked to the moon, these ebbs and flows of energy and mood.
It mentions ancient practices, women being on their moon, cycling together when living close to nature.
And that Benedek and Rubinstein study from the 30s, it's incredible. They could tell where a woman was in her cycle just from her therapy notes.
Seriously, that shows such a deep connection between psyche and hormones, doesn't it?
Totally. And the premenstrual phase, which often gets a bad rap, the source reframes it. It's potentially a time for deep inner connection, feeling not just your own stuff, but maybe the world's pain too.
It mentions Eckhart Tolle's pain body idea coming up then, but if you stay present with it, it can dissolve and actually connect you to creativity. The key seems to be honoring that need for rest, for alone time.
Traditional Chinese medicine has a practical take too. They talk about cold invasion during your period because you lose blood and heat, explaining why you might feel tired. So they advise resting more, avoiding cold food and drinks, eating warming things.
Makes sense. The source also acknowledges all the negative baggage around menstruation, the curse on the rag, how that negativity has been used historically to kind of keep women down.
Thankfully, that seems to be shifting, seeing menarche, the first period, as an important rite of passage.
Okay, turning to sexual health. The source points out how complex female anatomy is, way beyond just the tip of the clitoris, the whole clitoral system.
Yeah, thousands of nerve endings just for pleasure. It's biologically designed for it.
But then there's all the cultural stuff layered on top, linking sex to body image, the pressure to look a certain way, fear of pregnancy overshadowing pleasure.
Right. It contrasts that with how ancient cultures might have understood natural fertility control and really valued female pleasure.
The source also suggests natural family planning, done mindfully, can actually boost intimacy and pleasure. Not just be about avoiding pregnancy, it makes couples more aware.
And it talks about this quiet revolution, women discovering pleasure on their own terms and then teaching their partners. That story about the biofeedback therapist is pretty inspiring.
The one who decided to actively pursue pleasure, starting by just taking time to turn herself on.
Yeah. And the source says it changed how she experienced her whole body. Pleasure wasn't just genital, it was everywhere. It apparently transformed her life.
Wow. What about STDs? The source touches on that too, right?
It does. It talks about the mixed messages we get. Sex is everywhere, expected, but also terrifyingly risky. That double bind can lead to feeling stuck or taking risks.
So what's the advice there?
Well, it acknowledges that exposure isn't always disease. Your immune system matters, and that's linked to feeling safe and secure. But fundamentally, it's common sense condoms. Choosing partners carefully combined with something deeper. Self-respect, self-esteem, actually loving your own body and sexuality. That's your best defense.
And emotional factors are linked to chronic issues too, like vaginal or cervical problems.
Definitely. The source mentions studies linking cervical cancer risk factors to things like feeling ambivalent about sex, not having orgasms often, relationship conflict, even passive coping styles.
And that point about the body sometimes knowing about a partner's infidelity before the mind accepts it, that's wild.
It is. Another example of the body's wisdom. It also touches on chronic pain, like vulvodynia or interstitial cystitis, stressing the mind-body link for relief, along with diet and supplements.
What about stress urinary incontinence?
Kegels are mentioned as step one, but doing them properly is key. And postmenopause, local estriol cream can help with tissue thinning.
And perimenopause, menopause. The source sees it as a major shift needing support, but leading to freedom later.
Right. It explains estrogen dominance, often meaning not enough progesterone relative to estrogen. It talks about integrated hormones, estrogen, progesterone, sometimes androgens like DHEA, testosterone for balance, and sexual function plus herbs.
And it challenges seeing menopause just as a deficiency. Ovaries are still useful after 40.
Definitely. Okay, let's switch focus to nourishment, optimal size, body image, nutrition, as discussed in your sources.
The foundation here seems really simple, but maybe hard to do. Self-respect and self-acceptance.
Exactly. The source calls body hatred among women an epidemic, fueled by this relentless pressure to be thin, which just tanks self-confidence.
So the practice it suggests is just decide to respect the body you have now.
Pretty much. And it recommends that mirror exercise. Look in your eyes twice a day for a month. Say, I accept myself unconditionally right now.
What's the point of that?
It apparently brings up all those inner critical voices. The exercise helps you see them, name them, realize they're just old programming, and consciously choose not to buy into them anymore.
That leads to the idea that our bodies are shaped by our beliefs about them. So lasting change isn't about forcing it.
No, it's about changing your beliefs with love and compassion. Changes loved into being are permanent, the source says. Diets based on shame or deprivation, they don't last.
What about actual nutrition advice?
The source points a finger at insulin abuse from processed foods as a major driver of chronic disease and weight problems.
And it claims you can't really trust your food instincts until you stabilize your blood sugar and metabolism. That often takes some relearning.
That's the argument. It mentions the USANA 5-day reset program as one example for some women to help decrease cravings, reset metabolism, get stable blood sugar, listing benefits like better energy, potential weight loss, lower cholesterol.
But general advice is
Aim for about 80% low glycemic fruits, veggies, healthy fats, preferably organic. Maybe experiment with cutting out grains and reintroducing them to see how you react. Basically a low-sugar diet.
any specific foods highlighted?
Soy gets mentioned for potential benefits. Breast cancer prognosis, heart health, bones, though maybe not as strong as other factors. Fish oil for cramps, hot flashes, stress.
And bad fats.
Big warning about trans fats. Partially hydrogenated oils, linked clearly to heart disease, hormone issues, insulin resistance. They really mess things up.
What about bone health? Not just calcium.
No. The source really emphasizes vitamin D, magnesium, and weight-bearing exercise. Cites studies showing high calcium alone doesn't stop fractures, but lots of fruits and veggies do help bone density.
Magnesium sounds crucial.
It really is. Linked to improving anxiety, depression, asthma, constipation, diabetes, heart issues. So many things rely on it.
Manganese, too. And supplements.
Manganese is mentioned briefly, along with general daily supplement recommendations. But the source is clear. Supplements help, but they don't replace a good diet of whole, organic foods. That's the base. Okay, so wrapping things up, your material brings us back to the deepest level of healing through emotions, creativity, and finding purpose.
Right, revisiting emotional healing, the idea that the body needs us to actually feel painful emotions, not stuff them down.
Yeah, because delaying it just makes the body shout louder. Illness can be the end result of ignoring those deep needs for too long.
Like that migraine patient realizing her headaches were basically screaming at her to take care of herself.
Exactly. And forgiveness comes up as key for letting go of burdens. It's painful to hold resentment, right? But true forgiveness, the source suggests, often comes after you've fully felt the anger and pain, like the abuse survivor confronting her father first.
Releasing secrets, speaking truth. It's powerful. Saying no more changes your energy and maybe even helps shift things collectively.
And that link between creativity, purpose, and health comes back. Remember the fibroid example, pouring energy into dead ends.
Yeah, the message is about being true to your own dreams, your own wisdom.
And balancing that with contributing to the world. The source points out how women are often taught to sacrifice themselves, leading to resentment, which is linked, for some, to higher breast cancer risk. You can't pour from an empty cup, right?
Acknowledging accomplishments, not just money, but creative expression is important too. Women contribute so much financially now, but still often look for outside approval.
The call is to trust that inner knowing. Develop your voice based on your own values.
The source even connects prosperity to your thinking. That anecdote about divorce triggering a financial crisis.
But leading to studying finance, playing Cash Flow 101, and realizing free time and soul fulfillment were more valuable than just a high salary. It's about priorities.
And this idea that memory starts before birth, in our cells.
Yeah, the impact of the prenatal environment, feeling loved and wanted versus unwanted, having lifelong effects, even on the immune system. It's profound.
Healing has many paths. The source stresses it's not one size fits all.
Right. The best path is the one that feels right for you, right now. Outside advice only works if it resonates internally. Trusting yourself, your intuition, the wisdom in your cells, that's the core work. The work of heroes, the source calls it.
Even surgery or a health crisis can be a wake-up call. Approaching it with openness, surrender. The source suggests sometimes miracles happen. Maybe the surgery isn't even needed.
But you have to be willing to go through with it if it is needed. That's the letting go, letting God part.
And there are some really powerful healing stories shared.
The ovarian cancer patient healing deep emotional wounds from decades ago. The woman with aggressive breast cancer who refused chemo changed her whole life, diet, marriage, job, and years later, no obvious cancer, living one day at a time.
The patient using meditation with chemo. Northrup's own surgery being a peak experience of facing fear, finding care, letting go of rigid ideas about healing.
It all points toward something bigger. Divine love as a healing force, available to everyone, just asking to be a channel for it.
A couple of other points mentioned: smoking's impact, higher miscarriage rates for women, and exercise, learning to breathe through the nose for endurance and body connection.
And finally, that note of caution about industry influence. The ghostwriting scandal with Primpro. It raises questions about research integrity and its impact, like with the WHI study being stopped early due to risks.
Okay, so that wraps up our deep dive into your source material on women's health, wisdom, and healing. If I had to sum it up, the core message feels like your health is way more than just physical. It's deeply tied to your emotions, your energy, your mind.
Absolutely. And the real wisdom, the real power for healing, seems to lie within you in learning to listen to your body's unique signals and trusting that inner guidance.
And remember, this deep dive was put together just for you, based entirely on the sources you gave us.
So, maybe a final thought to leave you with. Considering all this about your body's wisdom, the power of your thoughts and feelings, what's one small step you could take, maybe even today, to listen a little more closely to your body?
What message might be there, just waiting for you to finally hear it?
Thank you so much for sharing your sources with us and letting us take this journey with you.